Ladies and gentlemen, from Capitol Records, you know these songs forwards and backwards. She is the first lady of rock and roll. She is the queen of rockabilly. Give her the warmest welcome you can to Ms. Wanda Jackson.
The rock and roll music just turned everything upside down. We, as artists, had always recorded songs with the intention of selling it to adults. But from 55 or 54 on, it started. Then we had to change gears and start doing songs for teenagers and young people, because when Elvis hit the scene, it was the young girls that bought the records. So the rest of us followed suit. So it was kind of a frantic and mixed up time. People didn't really know what to record. We were just grasping at straws. Well, I was a young kid at the time too, so all I know is it was so fresh and so youthful, and those songs talked about or dealt with in the content of the song things that a teenager, the things we were concerned with, dating, riding in a convertible, you know, all these, going to the prom. And so we could identify with that. Country singers were called hillbilly, and none of us liked that term, but that's what they referred to us as. And then when Elvis was playing the guitar and doing this new style of stuff, and eventually then the rock and roll, we started hearing about that. So it just became, if you played a guitar and sang these songs like that, you were a rockabilly. Probably there's not a whole lot of difference in the songs, maybe just the artist that sang them in the beginning. And then of course it kind of evolved into the 60s, the Motown sounds and the groups, and it began changing then. Well, shows like the Big D Jamboree in Dallas, we had Louisiana Hayride in Louisiana, Town Hall Party in California, and those are still to this day some of the most popular. If you can get a hold of the video of that, people love it. It wasn't hard to perform there because I was a country artist, and most of us were. So it was still pure country. I would just add, I would sing, for instance, Hard-Headed Woman or Let's Have a Party, songs like that. And rockabilly and country are like first cousins. You can hardly have one without the other. So they blend real well, and I don't believe any of us had any problems. Elvis Presley and I had problems with the Grand Ole Opry. That was one that was very dyed-in-the-wool country and so much different than what we were doing. And so that it wasn't a good experience for either one of us. In the beginning, I signed with Decca Records. After 2 years, I was still in high school, but I was working with Hank Thompson a lot, and he was like my idol and became my mentor. And he was on Capitol Records. So to me, Capitol Records had to be the greatest label in the world. And so after my contract with Decca ran out, I signed. Hank helped me get a contract with Capitol Records. So to me, that was the utopia. As far as recording for Capitol Records, yeah, I recorded on the West Coast at the Tower, and then in Nashville also. And the best I remember, it was like I'm on a tour going out west, but I needed to record. Artists recorded a whole lot back then because we had to have 4 singles and 2 albums a year. So it kind of depended on what location I was in, where I recorded, because they were equally good. And sometimes we would, in the 60s, we began using Nashville more. I did, because that Nashville sound was very, very popular. But I still would do some recording on the coast. With me, it was kind of equal. Ken Nelson has got to be the sweetest guy in the world. I mean, to work with him, you can learn so much from him. I think everything I learned about recording, I learned from Ken. Great producer. And I think the thing about Ken that I love so much, even if he didn't understand why I wanted to do a certain song or a certain type of material, he gave me space. He said, that's what you want, we'll try it. And not too many producers do that, I don't think. Yes, I remember the first time I met Gene Vincent. We were at a disc jockey convention. It was a very big deal in Nashville once a year, and that was the beginning of CMA, which it became later. But this was a DJ convention where disc jockeys from all over the nation came to meet the artists and get their records and so forth, and we performed. So Capitol Records, along with all the other recording companies, had their suite where door was open, you just come and go, and they had the drinks and maybe hors d'oeuvres, and you could take pictures. And so Gene Vincent and I wound up at the Capitol suite and met each other there for the first time, and he was already quite a big star. And yeah, I think we had a photo made, maybe this one. And I never had the opportunity to work with Gene, and I'm sorry I didn't. But it's just one of those things. I think he was much like all the rest of us. We were young kids having the time of our lives, doing what we loved to do, and getting popularity and celebrity. It was so exciting. And he was very congenial and very nice to talk to. I remember that. You know, I don't know how stories get started. It's just that on Let's Have a Party, something on it, I guess, reminded people of Gene Vincent's band, the Blue Caps, and I don't know what it was. All of a sudden I was hearing and reading articles that I recorded with the Blue Caps. But no, that was my band, and also with some studio musicians at Capitol Towers where I recorded it. Wasn't the Blue Caps. Yes, when I think of Gene Vincent, I can't help but think of the first time that I toured in France. Well, we saw the newspaper publications, and they had said, Hurricane Wanda hits the west coast of France, you know, for my tour. And then I would see the female Gene Vincent in all of the articles about me, and I'm saying, what is this? I never would have okayed being called female Elvis Presley or anything like that. And here it was in print. But then I learned from fans and from people we worked with and all, they said that is the biggest compliment that you could have. I said, well, how's that? They said, the French people don't even care about Elvis, Little Richard, Chuck Berry. It's Gene Vincent. So to be compared with him was the greatest compliment they could give you. How about that? The Europeans, I think it's well known that they don't change very easily, certainly not as quick as Americans do. We're always looking for the next big thing, as they say, but in Europe they cherish these, the older the people, the older buildings, cars, goes on and on. And they keep them up. These old buildings, 700 years old and things. And we've stayed in hotels and all that are 100 years old, kept up to date, but nevertheless the structure. And so they're just not so fast to let something go if they like it. So it's been a godsend for artists like myself from that era, because there aren't many of us left, but they truly do esteem those that are and still out working. Jerry Lee and myself and Sleepy LaBeef, a lot of them that are at the festivals. Yes, when we heard that Gene Vincent had died, it just I remember thinking that's impossible. He was only what 35, 36. He couldn't. It must be a mistake. And so yeah, it was kind of devastating because all of us were about the same age, and we're thinking, gosh, if it could happen to him, it could happen to us, any of us, which it did, some of them. But it was a great loss for the music industry, that's for sure. But he left a lot of good memories for a lot of people and left us all that good music that he did.